What to take for bad rotators and knees, motocross and labor work for decades. Is that something that they can help to
Yeah, for sure, especially if we're talking PEDs here,
Yeah.
right? Something, and I know people that are natural and haven't taken performance-enhancing drugs per se for the idea of enhancing performance or enhancing physique, but have been dealing with injuries for a long time. And peptides, there's a world of PEDs that kind of branches into peptides, which are like research chemicals that are used per se in like the medical field, but not actually used in the medical field. But there's some really cool things. So like the two I'm speaking of specifically are BPC 157, which is short for body protecting compound 157, and TB 500. Very, very good. They call it the Wolverine healing stack. I've used it myself. I've used it in many athletes. I have a really cool example of what this stuff can do, and I don't mind sharing.
Please do.
I will for sure. But so one of the there's a lot of studies on these things actually. There are studies.
Was this what you had told me when I messed my shoulder up?
With my hamstring?
Yeah,
it is. So there's these peptides. For a long story short, they basically just speed up the healing processes in the body. They drive blood flow. So there's a lot of studies that show what these things do, but realistically, one of the coolest studies, they actually removed an Achilles tendon from rats, and they were using peptides to create healing and a healing atmosphere in these rats. Well, the rats actually regrew an Achilles tendon.
That blows my mind.
Which is mind blowing, but it creates cell formation, right? And you basically he rebuilt structural tendons and ligaments that were required.
It came back.
Yes, and they do repair things, right? Because even if you look at a tear, a pretty severe tear, well, what needs to happen there? You technically do need to regrow pieces of that thing to form the bond and strengthen over time, right? So that's what these can do. Now, do they solve every problem? No. I mean, I have problems right now I'm dealing with for the last long period of time, which are just fucking pissing me off, for lack of a better term.
You still go put 5 plates on the fucking bar.
100%, because that's just what I know how to do. Probably a problem, but hey, here we are.
Gotta admire that dedication.
And like I said, I mean, they don't work magically for everything, because I will be completely transparent. I am using them right now. And am I instantly fixed overnight after a week or two of use? No. It still takes time and other modalities, but they work. So going into my situation that we spoke about with my hamstring, I was doing a stiff leg deadlift, and I was pretty strong at the time. I was at the bottom of the stiff leg deadlift, and I just felt my left hamstring completely unravel, like one of those yellow ropes that's kind of twined together. When it gets old, it unravels. Well, I felt my hamstring do that at the bottom of the movement. My right one was like tight in the stretch. The left one was tight, and then all of a sudden I felt the left one go super loose and lengthen, and it kind of popped and felt horrible. It was burning. It was bright red within minutes.
So yours hurt. See, mine didn't. I felt nothing. I just couldn't move.
Yeah.
I couldn't bring my left leg forward.
Mine hurt. But it was more so like a burning sensation. And within a day or two, it was black and blue from my ass cheek to the bottom of my kneecap, which spread all the way to my calf, and the whole back of my leg was black and blue. I was working with a gentleman named I can't even remember his name right now. It was Jeff, but he owns a
if you remember, we'll get producer Mac to toss it in there.
It was, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. He owns a clinic in Edmonton, and he had worked with many Olympians and stuff like that. I went in to see him. We got imaging done. Sure enough, there was a grade 2 tear. So my hamstring was kind of it was torn, but it was still intact. It wasn't completely torn where I needed surgery to reattach. But it was hanging on for dear life, basically, at this point, I was told. And he got in there with his hands and was feeling it. He's like, oh yeah, what we saw on the cameras is real. And I was told realistically I shouldn't load it for about 12 weeks at all, like no training that hamstring directly, 8 to 12 weeks at least, but we were going to assess as I was healing. I was using peptides at the time. I was using a little bit of growth hormone as well. And I was healing very fast, to the point that I was seeing him weekly. We were working on stuff, and we were about 4 weeks in, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, scared that I had fucked something up? And he was like, you are like healing crazy fast. I can feel it in there. And I was like, when I told him, and he's a professional, and in that world, like, he's not going to tell you, yeah, do those things. But it was like, I can tell you that whatever you're doing is working. So don't
advise it. Yeah.
Don't stop doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. But I'm not telling you what to do, basically, is kind of the way that conversation went. And I kept doing what I was doing. And within 8 weeks, I set a PR on stiff leg deadlifts. So I actually pulled a heavier load than I had torn my hamstring with 8 weeks later, when I was barely able to walk when it first happened. And that's not normal healing speed. That's not normal healing process. So when I say that these things work, they work very well. Now, would I say there's a ton of risk involved in using them? To be completely honest, I wouldn't. This is something that I've actually used in my mother. And I would use in people when they're in pain and cannot relieve pain from a certain type of issue. I'm not going to get into everything, but you're talking like tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, those type of things that are just inflammatory and tendonitis and those kind of things that are consistently, I mean, if you're in our world, you're moving all the time, you're training all the time, and taking that time completely away is really tough to do. This does speed up that healing process. So again, you need to understand how to use it. You need to understand the quality of stuff, where it's coming from and whatnot, but I do believe they work, and they work very well.
Okay. And just as this one I can actually give a little bit of feedback on. I'll get producer Mac to put the picture in right now. And what that was when I tore the membranosus off the tendinosis basically back in 2017. He recovered in 8 weeks. I still, to this day, 7 years later, cannot go over 4 plates on a deadlift. It just doesn't even lift.
Yeah.
I have a hole basically under my ass on the left side where, because I didn't go back in for surgery, I just kind of let the muscle die. When your life's too busy, you do stupid things like don't get surgery. That we're going on 7 years this year. So that 8 weeks is nuts.
Yeah, and I had been told, like, this is something that will come back and it will bother you for probably the rest of your life. You will have minor tears here and there and you'll feel discomfort. To be completely honest, I haven't, and I can stiff like deadlift
awesome.
500 plus pounds. And
I watched them.
No problem at all, right? I mean, it's hard, obviously, but that's one of those things that, like, I don't have issues with that. Do I feel the odd, like, clicking in the back of my hamstring and stuff here and there? For
You're getting
sure.
old.
Exactly. I just attribute that to age, not that specific injury.
Yeah. All right, next one. Do SARMs serve a real purpose?
I don't believe so. I don't ever use them, and I've transformed some pretty nasty physiques, as you've seen. I've turned people from amateurs into pros. I've coached pros on some of the best stages in the world, and hopefully this year on the biggest stage in the world. And I will never put a SARM in one of those people. I believe the side effects are just as daunting as steroids, and you'll get a lot more bang for your buck out of steroids. And there's been a lot more research done on steroids. The reality is, like we talked about, a lot of these steroids were invented for certain purposes. And there is a lot of literature on human trials using them. Whether they were approved, whether they ended up being used by the medical community, a lot of them actually did. Whether that was for AIDS patients or, you know what I mean?
Wasting, muscle wasting.
The SARMs are ones that didn't pass, and they actually...
that's scary.
And there wasn't a lot of research and data on them that is quite promising. So, in my opinion, why are we going that route? I've seen what it does to blood work. It's just as bad as any other steroid will do if you're using them in a manner that will elicit results.
Are they injectable or oral?
Oral, and that's
why people are doing it. Okay,
people
I couldn't
love
figure
them.
out why they.
I believe you can get injectable ones as well, but a lot of them are oral, which is why it's very easy, because if people are scared of the needle, and it's like, if you're scared of the needle, run from this fucking world and this conversation then, because at the end of the day, it's not gonna work out the way you want. There's no oral tab of testosterone that's going to work the same way an injectable testosterone will. You know what I mean? There's creams, there's this and that. I was offered testosterone cream for my own HRT. I said, fuck that. If you give that to me, I'm walking out of the room and throwing it in the garbage. And I did just that. I went and got a bottle of test like I knew how to do and put it in my body and got my blood work done and made sure my levels were good by myself. And that's a whole nother conversation. But, I mean, I don't want to be hopping in bed with my wife covered in testosterone cream and that going onto her skin.
Oh, fuck, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Man.
The skin is porous, right?
Yeah.
And just because you're going to absorb some of that doesn't mean somebody else won't if they're in contact with you.
Didn't even think about that.
And that's a real thing, right? You're talking about a lot of these type of creams that they prescribe and stuff because, again, it's taboo to use a needle and inject oils and this and that. But it's like, why do some people get the injectables and some don't? I mean, in my case, I was treated like a drug addict because I had some serious heart complications, and I was open and honest and told them that I used steroids, and they're like, oh, you're a fucking junkie, you're a drug addict, we're not giving you another vial of testosterone to dose your testosterone. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do it anyways because I'm a junkie, but the reality is I understand those drugs better than they do for a lot of people, right?
And now that you explained it to me, people who put shit just because they don't put it through a needle. When you put it internally through your digestion, you got your liver, your kidneys.
Yeah, 100%.
Holy shit, some of that stuff's worse.
Absolutely, 100%. And I can speak to, there's oral steroids that you take that are fucking horrible for you. And
What would be the worst one then? Just throw it out so people understand.
Halotestin is a very, very aggressive androgenic drug, and it will completely fucking obliterate your liver and so forth very quick. Now, do we use it in bodybuilding? Absolutely. Should you use it if you're not bodybuilding or powerlifting? Absolutely not. It's very, very taxing. Now, the way we use it in bodybuilding, very short bursts of time for a very specific goal, and we understand what it's doing and why we would use it. So we put it in for a short period of time, let it do its thing, pull it out, fix the problems it created, because the nice piece is the liver is the most resilient organ in the human body. Yeah. But it's only resilient so long. Because if you keep fucking blasting it and blasting it and blasting it, you will run into problems, right? And again, you talk about long-term issues with bodybuilding and PED usage, dialysis. People go on they have to get kidney issues because your kidneys filter your blood. When you're injecting something, it's going into your blood. Water balance in the body. A lot of people, and one of the biggest reasons people have to go on dialysis is uncontrolled blood pressure. Because your kidneys also filter your water levels in your body. And if you're bloated all the time and holding a ton of water and your blood pressure's through the roof, that's a very large stressor on your kidney. Yes. Now you're going to take a bunch of other things and you're going to stress your liver out at the same time, right? Now you see why this can be dangerous. Now again, can you do it properly? Yeah. Take care of your kidneys and your liver by not abusing the drugs.
Not drinking on the weekend on top of all of this.
If you're somebody that's drinking every weekend or going out and partying on the weekends, stay the fuck away from drugs in my industry, please.
Yeah.
Go train. There's nothing wrong with being the person that's a weekend warrior and works out during the week and takes care of their health Monday to Friday, and on weekends goes and has beers or whatever. That's fine. If you want to do that, that's up to you. I don't really care. But don't come in my world and pretend to be what we are.
Hardcore, yeah.
And use the drugs to look good at the parties you go to. I think that's fucked up.
Again, Google's is.
But then again, yeah, exactly.
It was the best 2 years of his life.
Perfect example.
And that's when it ended.
Right, and these are the people that get hurt. These are the people going out ripping lines of blow, doing Molly on the weekends, and hammering all these drugs all the time, and creating an environment where they're very body dysmorphic. They can't take their shirt off without being on drugs and so forth, and that leads to a very toxic mindset and person
and body
per se. And then it's like now you don't only have an addiction to whatever the fuck stimulants and all these other drugs. You have an addiction to steroids as well, which is a real thing. Right, so that's on.
We'll drop it there. He's getting mad at people. Yeah, completely get that. All right. Oh, producer Mac.
I have a question.
Yes.
You talked about something called a SARM.
SARM.
Whatever you were talking about just a minute ago.
Yeah.
I forget what it breaks down to.
Selective androgen receptor modulator.
Selective androgen.
So basically, what they say SARMs can do is they selectively act on androgen receptors. So it basically what it's saying is it's going to pick and choose in your body which androgen receptors it works on. An androgen receptor is basically a site in your body that responds to androgens, which are essentially an androgen like testosterone, those type of things. You have receptors in your body. You have estrogen receptors. You have all these type of things. And basically it's selectively choosing which ones to act on, which ones to turn on, which to not turn on and use in layman's terms. It's been proven in studies that doesn't really work.
Doesn't do it.
So
just
again,
a clever name.
Again, yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, to be honest, in that world speak about certain drugs and call them SARMs, and they're not even SARMs. So that again, when they're speaking of, like, I'll spit one out there. MK677. MK677 is not a SARM, but it's referred to as a SARM by almost everybody. It's actually not a SARM. It's a growth hormone secretagogue. Very different things.
Well over my head. No,
right.
But it's nice to know so this is the whole point here is reach out. We're going to have his social media there. If you have a question that some other idiot is just trying to sell you a product and they tell you it's safe, don't ever listen to the guy selling it to you.
100%.
Find someone like Braeden who's going to be like, he's going to give you, he has no allegiance to you other than he doesn't want another negative, like a casualty in the bodybuilding world because it makes everyone look bad. Reach out. The man's just going to give you an honest approach to this.
100%.